Greetings, everybody. Dave DeWalt here. I am the founder and CEO of NightDragon. We're an investment and advisory business that's focused in on the world of cybersecurity, national safety, and privacy. You got to have a good acronym for everything. We call it CSSP at NightDragon. And we've been doing a whole series of educational kind of webinars, really focused on the world of cyber and national security. Today's event, we call it Night Vision. We're doing the State of Asia. And the State of Asia is really important. I'm sure all the audience knows. This week in San Francisco, we have the APEC Summit. If you don't know the APEC Summit, it's the Asia Pacific Economic Collaborative, basically economic collaboration of 21 nations in Asia that come together to talk about opportunities and challenges in the region. And it's being hosted in America, in San Francisco, right in NightDragon's hometown. So as all part of that, we're seeing a lot of change in Asia from NightDragon's perspective. It's growing, trillions and trillions of growth of economic development. Nearly every nation is building digital transformation programs. And of course, Singapore is doing smart nation work, smart city work. India is doing Digital India. Malaysia is doing their My Digital programs. And we're seeing a tremendous amount of growth in the cloud and AI, but we're also seeing a lot of cybersecurity threats. Asia represents the most attacked region in the world. Over 31% of all attacks are on Asian companies and governments. That represents more than 54% of the companies have experienced data breaches in Asia and is at an all-time record high for attacks, breaches, and threats. Today, I have an amazing guest that I'm really, really excited to have on here. Mr. David Koh is the first commissioner of the Cybersecurity Agency in Singapore, as well as the chief executive officer of CSA. Mr. Koh, thank you so much for joining us. Oh my gosh, it's great to see you, sir. And thank you for coming on our show as well. Can you tell everybody just for a minute what CSA is, and kind of just for the audience that doesn't know Singapore as well, and how you became that person who leads it?
Great. Thanks very much, Dave. Great to be on board here. Thanks for having me. 8 years ago, our Prime Minister decided that we needed a central agency in charge of cybersecurity. So he set up the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. So CSA has the overarching perspective of cybersecurity, coordinating not just the operational, technical, and intel elements of cybersecurity, but also the policy and overarching strategy for cybersecurity for the nation. And in addition to this, because cyber is cross-border and international, I also oversee a lot of Singapore's international work with respect to cybersecurity. How did I get the job? I guess when the Prime Minister was looking for volunteers, everyone else took a step back and I was a bit slow, ended up getting this job. But nonetheless, it's been hugely exciting, rewarding, and I've been happy to have been doing this for the last 8 years.
Well, we're really thankful for your service, sir, as well. Singapore is one of the models for all of the world, in my opinion. As most of everybody knows who listens, the United States is playing a little catch up too. And we've been working very hard on our CISA, we call it CISA, the Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency. And Jen Easterly has done an incredible job. I know you know her, sir, and working on public-private partnerships. Can you talk for a minute? What's the strategy you have for public-private partnership in Singapore? Do you have similar mechanisms? Maybe say a few words about that for a minute.
Right. Yes, I know CISA and Jen Easterly very well. In fact, CSA's job, as it were, maps partly to CISA's work, but in the US also to ONCD and Neuberger in the NSC's work as well, and a little bit of the work that Department of State, NATFIC, does as well. So my duties stretch across all of that, but I'm good friends with all of them, and I think we have enjoyed very strong partnerships with our international collaborators, including the US. You're right, public-private partnership is essential. I think one of the key elements of cyber, which is different from traditional national security work, is the need for public-private partnership. Let me explain. I think if you look at traditional national security, the kinetic world, armies, navies, air forces, I would say that the government typically has the monopoly or controls most of the assets with respect to national security. It controls the operational means, the intelligence, and the capabilities. By and large, governments own the tanks, the ships, and the aeroplanes associated with this. But when it comes to the digital domain and in cybersecurity, this isn't true. The infrastructure that we operate on, by and large, is owned by the private sector. Private sector companies have huge capabilities, whether it's intelligence, whether it's operations, the wherewithal. And in many cases, they match or even exceed that of governments. So it is essential for us to find a way to do this collaboration with the private sector, because they have the means, they have the capabilities, and it's just a huge challenge for us. Why is it a huge challenge? Two reasons. One is we don't have the instincts. We are used in the national security domain to signing agreements with other governments. We know how to work with other governments. We are less familiar with how to work with the private sector. Secondly, it becomes doubly challenging when you're working with a private sector company that is not headquartered in your own country, but somewhere else. Then how do you match these concerns? How do you work collaboratively and on sensitive topics with across the public-private partnership? But nonetheless, we recognize that this is something that has to be done.
It's music to my ears, sir, to hear you say Jen, Ann, and Nate, because knowing them by first name like we do, it's great to hear the alliance that you have and the relationship between Singapore and the U.S. as well. And it's also music to my ears to hear you talk about public-private partnership. When I was CEO of FireEye and Mandiant and McAfee and a number of companies, I really tried hard to build government partnerships as well. And it takes two, and it takes a village in this sport to do what we need to do. Can you talk a little bit about the threat environment? I opened it up and talked about Asia being one of the most attacked region. From your vantage point and all the things you see, what are the biggest threats that you're seeing in the region? Kind of what's keeping you up at night? I'm sure there's a few things, but what's kind of worrying you from the threat landscape?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, I'd say, sorry, going back to the last bit, one thing which I didn't say was CISA's great JCDC initiative. So I think that deserves a shout out. I'm trying to establish public-private partnerships in Singapore and with Mandiant and others. We just signed MOUs with Google and Microsoft. But no matter what we do, I think the short answer is we are taking inspiration from what Jen is doing with respect to JCDC, and we're plugging in on that front as well. Now, coming back to your question, just wanted to say that out front first. Now, I want to address your question, like what are we seeing in Asia? Well, first of all, what I want to say is that there's nothing unique about Asia. The reality is that cyber is global, is flat. So what we're seeing in Asia perhaps is just reflective of what you see all over the world. Singapore's vantage point is that we are a data hub. We are a hub for information, we're a hub for banking, finance, etc. Consequently, what we see in terms by way of traffic and by way of threats is just reflective of global trends. What I'm seeing now is criminals, ransomware, and, oh, by the way, APTs. If I could elaborate a little bit, I think that the Asia is fast growing. What you see in Asia is that there is a huge effort to move into digitalization. Governments, individuals, companies are all making full use of the digital opportunities, whether it's education, whether it's social, whether it's economic, financial. So countries, companies, individuals are all moving into the digital domain. These offer great opportunities, but with the opportunities come the threats. So the criminals are out there because the money is out there. And what you find are criminal gangs targeting the newly digital adopters and scams, fraud, etc. These are making a significant impact in the Asia Pacific. Second is ransomware. I think in the past, we saw cyber incidents, mostly espionage related, whether from a national security perspective or industrial espionage. Increasingly today, we find that the gang's capabilities have leveled up, and we see ransomware as emerging or a progressive threat. A few years ago, I would say ransomware was mostly of the retail nature, targeting small and medium enterprises. Today, we see their capabilities going up, and then they are targeting much larger enterprises, not hitting individual computers, onesies and twosies, but rather taking down entire networks. The advantage, of course, is that the ransom that they can extract is no longer in the $100,000 or $1,000 range, but in the $1 million range. So this represents a huge threat, not just from the disruption of business, but actually some of the businesses that are actually involved in also in the business of providing essential services to our countries. And last, the threat of APTs, state-backed, state-related entities still present. They tend to be less public. Low and slow, I think, is the term, and a bit more subtle, but they're still present.
One of the statistics that continues to alarm me, David, is the number of threat actors that we track. When I was CEO of FireEye at Mandiant, we tracked about 800 different groups around the world, unique TDPs, as we like to say. Just last year, in the last 12 months, we've seen 953 net new groups formed with TDPs, bringing the total to over 3,000 threat actors. There's only about 3,000 cyber companies. So now we have almost 3,000 unique threat actors in the world, which is just an amazing statistic to me, just watching what's happening. Can you talk, sir, a little bit about maybe technology trends for a minute? You know, it's been 1 year since generative AI and ChatGPT jumped on the scene. Of course, it's been around for a long time, but we're now starting to see some offense and threat areas there. But we're also seeing some pretty amazing technology and innovation happening as a result of AI. How do you characterize AI and kind of your vantage point from Singapore as such a world leader in digital transformation? What is AI doing for you?
It's a great question. First of all, on the growth of the number of threat actors, two things I would say. One is that, well, clearly it's a growth industry. And there are huge opportunities, not just from the security dimension of it, but also from the threat actor perspective. Now, why is this happening? I would say that a lot of it has to do with what one might call the democratization of cyber tools. I think in the past, you had to have indigenous capability to develop and create these tools and then operate these tools. What we see is actually this segmentation of the vertical stack. So increasingly, you find that tools, services, technologies for the attacker have become sold as a service. So you find that there are people who are producing the tools, there are others who are actually maintaining the tools, and then there are others who can then specialize on just the initial access and operating the tools. So they don't need the deep depth of technology. Because of this, I think you have many more actors. Now, because you have more actors, you have new targets and different types of motivations, as I mentioned earlier. So this is actually a huge challenge. And consequently, the target sets are also different. I would say that in the past, what we saw was that primarily it was espionage, whether industrial espionage or national security espionage. But increasingly, you find that small companies, small and medium enterprises are also targeted. But the big companies themselves have a different set of threat actors. So this whole trend of moving in terms of the threat, the number of actors, and of course, the potential victims is significant. On tech trends, AI is a big thing. If you had asked me 2 years ago, what was the biggest thing on my radar, I would have said, without a doubt, quantum. Quantum, of course, as we know, threatens to undo a lot of the traditional encryption that we have. So there was a great fear of like, what's going to happen? All this is going to be unraveled. We need to prepare for it because of store and decrypt later threats as well. So that was occupying my time. We had research projects on this. In addition to that, operational work streams to see how we would transition. Then ChatGPT came online and all bets were off. Quantum is still out there. I think, don't get me wrong, I've still got people working on that, but it's not the bright, shiny object that's in the room right now. That's ChatGPT, Gen AI, etc. Gen AI, two elements to it. First one is that everyone is using it. So we do need to look into the security and the trustworthiness of AI products. So I've got teams looking into this. This would include elements of data poisoning, bias, transparency. Not what one would traditionally call cybersecurity, but still elements that we have to consider. The second element of AI, which we think is important, is actually the use of AI in cybersecurity. It's a great opportunity, and this is something that we must leverage on. So two immediate elements come to mind. One is the immediate work of our analysts, the tier one SOC operators. They're just inundated with all that kind of the alerts that are coming in. AI potentially helps us to screen this and do our jobs better. Relatedly, we've got all kinds of threat feeds, intel coming in, and we've got to sift through that and come out with reports. Engineers, of course, not actually, their core competency of my engineers at least is not writing. So they really benefit from ChatGPT's ability to summarize key ideas and put it across in a readable manner. So this is one big area which we're trying to leverage on. Second big area is actually data analytics, just trying to detect the weak signals, APTs, etc. This is something that we can and we should also leverage on in terms of the opportunities for AI. So applying AI in our cybersecurity work.
Well said, sir, and thank you for that. One stat for you as we wrap up here, which I found another amazing, is we've seen over the last 12 months, 47 billion of venture capital going into AI applications and development of AI. But we've only seen 200 million of venture capital going into AI security and safety. So 47 billion versus 200 million. So it really kind of shows the gap that we still have as it relates to security and safety of AI versus the development of AI. We're going to need to catch up. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to just say a big thank you to Mr. David Koh for all his hard work. Incredible first commissioner of CSA in Singapore, Chief Executive Officer, 8 years. Thank you for all of your amazing work and insights. Keep up the great work. Thank you for the relationship with the United States government, and thanks for coming on the Night Dragon Show.
Thanks so much, Dave, for having me, and thanks for the great partnership with your previous companies and with industry as a whole. As you said, it is something that's essential for us, public-private partnership, and we in Singapore are committed to seeing how we can do this better. Cybersecurity is a team sport, and it's, I would say, an international team sport. Happy to be part of the team.
Team sport. Thank you. Thanks for coming on.